Big Mac, Chicken McNuggets, no, Big Mac and Quarter Pounder with cheese, or Filet-O-Fish. You'd be doing the same thing if you were at McDonald's, because you can choose not just one, but two of your favorites for just $6. Tasty Big Mac, crispy 10-piece Chicken McNuggets, juicy Quarter Pounder with cheese, or savory Filet-O-Fish. Enjoy two of your all-time favorites for just $6, if you can decide on the two. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Single item at regular price.
What's going on, folks? Thanks for taking the time to hit that download button to check out a brand new episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade, your one-stop shop for toys, tech, and talk with some assembly required. I'm your host, Rich Butler, and if this is your first time downloading an episode, first of all, thanks for hitting that download button and letting us grace your speakers or headphones. Second, a bit of background on what we do here. Toys and Tech of the Trade is an interview series where we sit down with creators and entrepreneurs and discuss the gadgets, the gear, and sometimes even the software that they use to create their content and run their business. Now, when it comes to the toys aspect of the title, we like to focus on the toys that put a smile on these creators and entrepreneurs' faces. Whether it's something as simple as action figures to something as complicated as knives or lighters or even cars, the definition of toys is very broad here, and we definitely want to share it with you guys. All right. Now let's talk about our guests for this week. And I use guests because we actually got a 2-for-1, as I am sitting down with Phil Rivo and Tom Mott, creators of the card game Oh Fruck. And no, that is not a mispronunciation on my part or a clever use of wordplay. The title of the game is indeed Oh Fruck, and it is a card game that leverages a traditional deck of cards. It is a very, very unique but also entertaining concept, and my conversation with both Phil and Tom not only dissects the origin of the card game, but how they were acquainted through their college years, reacquainted later on, and their passion for creating art and something unique led them to create this amazing and definitely unique card game. As I said, we not only learn the origins of the game, the origins of their friendship, but more importantly, they also share actionable bits of information that will allow you to possibly apply it to your business or your creative endeavor. So without any further ado, let me turn it over to Phil and Tom, and you can learn more about the toys and tech of their trade. My guests for this episode are Phil Rivo and Tom Mott from the Fruckus Company. Don't let the name fool you. These incredibly talented gentlemen are very, very artistically inclined, and on top of that have a very interesting card game called Oh Fruck that they're going to share with us. And we're going to talk about the origins of their company, how they reconnected after working together previously, and we're also, of course, going to get into the toys and tech of their trade. Phil, Tom, thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to sit down with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so obviously the first thing that jumps out is people are going to ask about the Fruckus Company, and I want to get into that. But more importantly, you guys previously worked together and disconnected and then reconnected because of your camaraderie and the desire to work together. What did you guys do previously, and how did you guys become acquainted?
Tom, you want to start, and I'll jump in?
Yeah, sure. So we met in art school. We met at UCLA Art School back in the 80s. I guess that makes us a little vintage.
I'm right there with you.
We were the youngest students there.
Nice.
The Doogie Housers of the art.
Yeah, we were the Doogie Housers.
Gotcha.
But we met in art school. We really hit it off. We used to do a lot of performances together, conceptual art stuff, pop-up galleries, art events, things like that. It wasn't like we were just like painting side by side, but we were like kind of going out and doing stuff and being personalities. And we were roommates after college. We were in each other's weddings. We both started out doing some work in interactive media in the 90s. And then our paths diverged. At that point, but we've been friends since then. We've been very close friends since. So I think the last time we were working together, Phil, was it Philips Interactive Media? Was that it? Like
Yeah,
1993 or something like that?
yeah. Tom and I worked together in the kind of in that time period after we both got out of school,
Okay.
and we're running around. And then, our kind of personal paths diverged a little. We've always lived in town together, and we've always been hanging out, and we have sort of a core group
Gotcha.
of other artists that we all sort of work together on different stuff over the years. And Tom has a band as well, etc. So there's sort of a whole group of us that have always socialized and kind of worked creatively together. And I ended up venturing off into the advertising field. And Tom stuck with interactive and stuck with games, and has really been deep into games, mostly kid games, for the last 20 years.
Now, what were you guys? What was the art style that you guys were known for when you started out in college, and how did that translate to your current endeavors?
Oh no,
So,
I don't know how to, Tom.
I know how to answer this. So Phil, sorry, I'm wandering around here. Phil was often wearing a suit in college and mixing martinis. And we used to joke that he was like a Larry Tate from Bewitched.
Nice.
And he seemed more like an advertising executive than
Than an artist?
than an art student. Like, he didn't have the torn, paint stained blue jeans and, the funky hairdo. He was like a madman. It was like he had stepped out of Mad Men, but 20 years before Mad Men was a thing. And we all kind of thought it was like a persona. And then, you get older and you kind of grow into who you are. And it's like, oh, well, no, that's Phil. Like, he's a sales guy. But we would like dress up in suits at openings and smoke cigars. Or I remember Phil just made martinis. Like, that was his piece. I was doing stuff more like I tied the two farthest buildings at UCLA together. So I got a really long string and tied the art department building to the medical center.
You want to get a little closer into your mic.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, I tied the two furthest buildings of school together. I was dancing up on the roof. Phil was mixing martinis. We would put on suits and smoke cigars obnoxiously at openings. Right after college, we did a pop-up gallery with a couple friends. We booked a space in Koreatown and put on a show with about 4 or 5 artists. So we were doing a lot of stuff like that.
We had that whole pop-up thing that was kind of a whole group of shows that we did in the 90s under the banner, the Ron Dickles Gallery. So we had this sort of traveling gallery around town where sort of a group of us showed and we performed, and we would host Battle of the Bands. And so it was sort of an ongoing thing. But I think one of the things that we always really were interested in was sort of this mixing of time periods and, a certain type of ersatz nostalgia, kind of 60s, 70s. There was just a certain kind of aesthetic that Tom and I and the group were always really kind of fascinated with. And I think that kind of, gets translated into what we ended up doing with Oh Fruck and what the Fruckus Company kind of the art and the humor and kind of the sarcasm and the aesthetic of what we're doing. I think is somewhat translated into this game and some of the games that we're working on to hopefully launch here shortly.
Well, coming out of college and going into the ad world, how was that climate back then, and how did that help shape you for this next chapter with the Fruckus Company? Like, what experiences did you look at and say to yourself, when I run my own company, I don't want to do this, or I don't want this particular style for my brand?
Well, I guess, there's a couple of different angles. I was deep into the technology side of it, and I got into the whole internet, the whole digital advertising thing quite early.
Nice.
And so that had a big influence on me in terms of understanding how to do things. And at the end of the day, you just have to do things, and you kind of figure it out. And I guess with the Fruckus Company, I hadn't been in the game business. Tom had been in the game business, but Kickstarter gives us an opportunity to lower that barrier to entry,
100%.
and Amazon gives us an opportunity to lower the barrier to entry. And it's just a space we hadn't played in together. And I would say the advertising side of it gave me the confidence on the production side to say, hey, you know what? Like, we've been kicking around ideas for a while. And, if we don't do it now, we won't do, what are we waiting for? So we should just do this thing. And, kind of that was the genesis of getting Oh Fruck launched. And, hopefully, fortunately it's been selling now, because you don't know, you just have no idea, so, we took a chance, but, I think it's really the learning to speak to people the way they want to be spoken to, sticking to, building a brand and sticking to it, because, whenever you do something, people will ask you, well, have you thought about doing this? Or have you thought about doing that? Or Phil, Tom, have you thought about doing, it's like, well,
you
wait,
get 100 masters.
That's not on brand. That's not what we're about.
Right.
Like, there's other guys that have different game companies, which we like a lot, but they're doing something totally different. We are building a brand that's a casual gaming brand, and we want to have a certain sensibility and a certain type of humor, certain tongue-in-cheek type of humor. That is what our brand is about.
Well, in other words, you have your customer avatar established. Right?
Yes, for sure. I think so. I think it's a good way of putting it.
Now,
and it's mostly us.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
We're making the game that we wanted to play with our kids.
Gotcha.
So we're not millennials. We're not. We don't have preschool kids anymore. My kids are in middle school. His kids are in high school. And we're a little bit older, and we wanted a game where we could play it with each other, while we're having a cocktail and have a laugh, but we could also play it with our kids, and it wouldn't be totally inappropriate.
Well, here's being on the West Coast. I feel that a lot of people I've spoke to, and just as a collector of toys and just being immersed in that, a lot of stuff was just born during that era. Like all the great stories when it comes to toys and games, the genesis for a lot of them is on the West Coast. And, your career, Tom, you continued being involved in the games industry. And how was that transition as you saw the changing of the guard, so to speak, when it came to game consumption? Because growing up, especially in the 80s and 90s, if you guys may agree with this, the big push was always like board games or like Guess Who or Mousetrap or Operation, and then the culture shifted to where now you have a lot of different different card games, Cards Against Humanity, stuff like that. How was it watching that unfold, and how did that change allow you to move forward, to pivot, so to speak, to launch this card game? Because now it's like what Phil was saying before, with Kickstarter, the opportunities are there, and being able to launch a product has become, not to say that it's easier, but there's less hoops to jump through.
Right. Well, so, I have like four answers here. One is that, I was a big fan of comic books growing up, the 70s, 80s, but then towards the late 80s and into the 90s, I really did not like the visual style of comics. I don't want to name names, but there was comics got kind of ugly, in my opinion. Too many lines, thin lines, characters out of proportion. It was not my thing at all. And I was kind of like, well, I guess comics are over with. That stinks. But then, like in the late 90s and especially in the early 00s, you have this kind of like renaissance where like all of a sudden people like Darwin Cook are coming along, and and Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, and comics are awesome.
Yep.
I agree. And TV, it's the same way. It seemed like we were going to be in this world of like Mr. Belvedere and Webster and Saved by the Bell, and all of a sudden like things got awesome again. And we grew up playing Monopoly and Risk and Mousetrap, which I don't know if anyone ever actually played Mousetrap.
I played it, I think, once when I was a kid. I think I played Guess Who once also, and the and that was just bad.
yeah. And then when I got out of college, and the industry I got into, it was much more screen based. It was like, we say games, but I should put an asterisk by it because it was children's interactive media.
Okay.
And
like Carmen Sandiego?
Like, what's that?
Like Carmen Sandiego, Oregon Trail,
exactly.
Like that. Yep, I remember that stuff from computer class.
Yeah. So, but I was working in a younger category, like working on Berenstain Bears products, Finding Nemo, Richard Scarry, Dr. Seuss. And so throughout the 90s, I was doing all this like screen-based stuff, and it culminated with working on a Lego video game called Lego Alpha. And the funny thing about Lego Alpha Team is all of us who were working on it, we wanted to be playing with the Lego bricks. We didn't want to be online. We didn't want to be on a computer screen with a mouse and a keyboard playing like a video game with the Lego. We wanted to like hands-on stuff. And so I kind of had this moment of I don't want to do screen-based content for kids. Like I want to do something else. And I was really lucky to hook up with Leapfrog because they were doing interactive books and toys and games and tactile, like physical, real things. The books are actual print books with pages, and you can read them. But you can also touch the pages, and there's interactive content, and there's audio. And it was like I had found my people. It was like, oh, this is perfect for me. And it allowed me to work a lot with Disney and Warner Brothers and Mattel and Nickelodeon and all these different creative IPs. But what I remember is all of a sudden that there was kind of renaissance of games, like Carcassonne. I play it with my kids, and it's way more fun to me, anyways, than like playing Risk, or Settlers, or Ticket to Ride, or even games like. It's just wonderful. Like there's so many great games out right now. The problem I have, and I think Phil has this too, is we have short attention spans. Where it's hard. Like I love Dungeons and Dragons. I love everything about it. I wish I could play it. I have friends who've been playing campaigns years, but it's too complicated for me. Like the barrier to entry is the cognitive load is too high, and so I'm always drawn to those games where it's easy to pick up, play casually. And that was true of video games. I was always big on arcade.
You're a little too far from the mic.
You get back to that mic, baby.
I gotta kiss this thing. Okay. I was always, one and done. Like, a couple rounds of Tekken, couple rounds of Mario Kart or Road Rage. I could never play games like Zelda where you kind of had to commit for a couple weeks.
You didn't like the grind.
What's that?
You didn't like the grind.
No, I just can't. My attention wanders.
Right.
And it's I'm wistful about it. I wish I could, but I can't. But what I want to say is working at Leapfrog for so many years. There's a couple things. Like one thing is that I realized that growing up, you see a game like Monopoly or Risk, and it just seems like it comes out of this black box, like Mattel. Like you don't really know what goes on inside that building.
Nope.
And when you work at a company like Leapfrog, there's a process and it's brick by brick. You start out, hey, we want to make a product. We've identified an opportunity in the market. We have a target age range. We're working with this creative property, or we're doing an original property, and then you do your research, you brainstorm, you do your ideation, you settle on a plan, you execute the plan, you play test and play test and play test over and over, and you iterate and polish, and then you put through a QA process and you get it out there. And it's daunting if you've never done it, or it's daunting if you don't know what that structure is. But when you do it for 15 years, it becomes second habit. And so
Right.
that was a huge help for us in putting out our own game, because I'd gone through that process so much. And it actually goes back to art school. Like, when you're given assignments in art school and then you're doing performances or video pieces or consult pieces, it's really a course in design. We didn't call it that, but they give you an assignment. You kind of look at the parameters and the constraints, and what's your budget, which as a student is nothing. When's it due? And you think about like what you're going to do, and and you execute. And so that translating those skills from art school into making games and products, there's a very direct.
Well, I think one of the things that the art school angle, which a lot of people in the business come out of art school, is
Right.
you have to put yourself out there. So if you're not the kind of person that's going to put yourself out there, you're not going to be doing many creative things. Like,
Right.
if
you can't sell yourself, how can you sell anything?
Yeah, because you're selling yourself, and that's why, Tom was, I think, joking earlier, which is, this is a very niche thing, at least to get started, which was, hey, we wanted to make a game that we wanted to play, that our kids would play with us.
Right.
And, we have teenage kids, and we have a certain kind of lifestyle. And, there's a lot of people who, we've gotten people to say, oh my God, like, I'm not going to buy a game that's called Oh Fruck. And it's like, hey, you know what? Then don't buy it.
For you, right?
Don't buy it.
Yeah, fuck you.
It's true.
That's fine. Don't buy it. That's, that is kind of down that the Kickstarter thing. The Kickstarter thing and the whole renaissance in gaming really allows for a whole world of niche products.
Absolutely.
That, even though, and niche doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a tiny thing.
Nope.
It's just that, if you go into game stores, like I said, there's a world of fantasy, and there's a world of role playing, and there's a world of strategy, and you can find your niche within those things. And there's actually opportunity there's a lot of opportunity, and I don't know that the opportunity will go away. I think in a weird way, it's like craft beer, like the beer industry just changed. People just, there used to be 3 beers, and now there's hundreds of beers. Beer became a completely different type of business, and
Right.
people want novelty, and people want, if they go out and they drink, or like in a lot of different businesses, the barrier to entry to have more products, and have products that are more focused and less watered down across, I think that was the big renaissance that really started creatively in a lot of industries really
100%.
20 years ago, which is that everything doesn't need to be, that's the game business. It used to be Mattel and Hasbro, right?
Absolutely.
And everything had to be watered down to the lowest common denominator. And now it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, I think the thing I was gonna say was, I think that that there's been also a massive culture shift, and being kind of that we're all 80s, 70s, and 80s kind of people. We've kind of seen this unfold. Like, we're in a generation now that has never seen a Walkman, or never seen a disc-based CD player. And as such, we're kind of in that unique situation where we can evolve our business ideologies and even our products, because we've kind of been in between all these different Renaissance periods. Like, if you think about it, going back to what Tom was saying before, it's like you go to a regular toy company nowadays, and back then everything had to be, this is our license, we're doing, you know, an assortment of action figures, they're all going to have the same mold, just different colors, you know, we're going to do the safest board games possible, you know, with little plastic characters, and that's it. Now there's so many different things, because everybody's mentality has evolved to where it's not just to what Tom was saying before, just Dungeons and Dragons. Like, when we were growing up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you know, Dungeons and Dragons was looked down upon, you know. Now it's like people are streaming full Dungeons and Dragon games on Twitch and all this stuff. Yeah. But that's just because the culture shift has been so huge, especially with game consumption.
Well, you have so many more educated people, and you've got the whole kind of counterculture thing that isn't really counterculture anymore. And it's like, you know, what did it start with? Comics? Did it start with Juxtaposed magazine? Did it start with the Renaissance and street art? But, you know, I laugh sometimes, you know, like, you know, with other business, you know, and friends of mine going, you know, like, can you imagine if we had trying to pitch Oh Fruck? You know what I mean? It's just a joke. Like, you know, nobody would, no company 20 years ago would produce Oh Fruck. Like, that's it's just a non-starter. Right. Hey, you know, I'm doing this game, and it's a play on words, and it's a nostalgia thing, and it's based, you know, it's a, you know, yada yada yada. You know, thank you very much. You know, you just, everything changed for the better. You know, for the better. That's for sure. And in that of you know, there's a lot of things that maybe didn't change for the better, but this category changed for the better.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as someone who's been in the space, you know, going back to what Tom was talking about with comic books, you know, I've been a longtime comic book collector, and it's one of those things when, you know, I was reading the 90s stuff, and then Image burst on the scene, and then a lot of those guys from Marvel and DC went to Image, so that art style went on with them, and then, of course, Marvel and DC tried to adapt, you know, better paper, all the ink, you know, going more mature, and again, the audience shifted back to something else, and even now, you know, with the worldwide acceptance of just comic book culture as the norm, it's funny because it's like those kids that were, you know, made fun of for reading comic books, now they get to watch all this stuff on screen, share it with their kids are running around, you know, quoting the movies, buying the merchandise. And I think that with card games and that particular genre, there's so many different opportunities to do things because the market is changing and kids just want to try new stuff.
Yeah, well, it's the emergence of nerd culture.
Yep.
There just isn't. I mean, the dominant culture has just totally changed. I mean, 100%. You know, it's cool to be into Dungeons and Dragons. It's cool to be a nerd. Yep. It's cool to do your own thing, and you know, so all this stuff that, you know, used to be kind of hidden away, you know, in the cracks. It's a big part of the dominant culture. You know.
Yeah, you know, I remember when Empire Strikes Back came out, and I bought a Yoda T-shirt, and I actually bought it ironically. I think it's the first time in my life that I understood irony. I was at like a J.C. Penney's, and it was this bright yellow T-shirt with this vinyl iron on, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Yeah, I was probably like 13 or something, 14. And I wore it to school, and no one batted an eye because I was a nerd.
Right.
And like, only a nerd would wear a Yoda, you know.
Exactly.
Like in my high school, you couldn't wear a Spider-Man T-shirt, or, you know, when we were at UCLA, you couldn't wear like a Mighty Thor T-shirt. People would think you were a troglodyte or something.
Right.
But, you know, now I go to work, you know, I have a day job too, and, you know, someone's got like a Batman tie clasp,
yep,
you know, or someone has their Avengers T-shirt, and everyone has seen Avengers Endgame. You know, it's not this like niche thing anymore.
Yep, and to that end, I wanna bring it full circle. You know, both of you had these unique journeys, and then you guys came back together to form this company. Tell me a little bit more about that particular aspect when you guys reunited? Like, was that something where you ran into each other and then the dialogue went into, hey, we should work together again, and it went from there? Or was it a little bit more calculated and a bit more organized?
Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
Well, we've always been friends. Like, we've always stayed in contact.
Right.
And been close. And I think we were just at this point where we were kind of kvetching a bit about stuff. And then and then this light went off. It's like, oh wait, we've both been doing this for so long. Like, we tend to downplay our expertise. Like, I've been designing interactive products and games for Leapfrog for so long. Like, of course I could design my own. And Phil has been doing sales and marketing for so long. Like, of course and so it was kind of this moment of like, hey, like, we're always talking. Like, let's just do it. We got the tools. Like, we got Photoshop, we got Illustrator. You reach out to manufacturers online. You use Kickstarter. You use Amazon. There's like all the tools are there, and we're smart guys. Like, like we can figure it out. So like, let's do this together and have fun.
He and I, we were at the Grand Central Market in downtown LA because he lives on one side of town and I live on the other side of town. So we just happened to be there for breakfast, and it kind of just, we just had a conversation, and one thing led to another while we were having breakfast. And we both said, like, God, we should try to do this. We've been kind of, scratching around the edges, and he had time, and it was a time and opportunity thing, and I was kind of making some transitions, and I said, look, let's do it. I mean, the worst that can happen is we're going to have a bunch of games that we're going to give people for Christmas.
That's it.
Until they never, Uncle Phil, please don't give me these games anymore. That's what's going to end up happening. That's the worst that's going to happen. And we're probably going to have some fun in the meantime, because we're going to get together and we're going to have cocktails. We're going to play this game, and we're going to loop all our friends into it. And, we've got a large group of folks that, we could use as our product testers. And so, it was part work and really kind of part social project. And, so we kind of took a stab at a couple of categories, that we thought we could do something interesting in. And it kind of one thing led to, with Oh Fruck, specifically with Oh Fruck, nobody had really done anything with a traditional deck of cards.
Right.
And like forever. That was really our, because I love a traditional deck of cards, and, all kids get fascinated with cards,
Absolutely.
All my kids were fascinated with just playing with regular decks of cards, and, all kids are like that. And,
there is that huge boom in like beautiful artisanal custom limited edition card decks that people are doing.
Right.
There's beautiful stuff on Kickstarter and Cardify and all that, but no one is saying, oh yeah, here's a new game that you can play with your standard 52 card deck.
Nope. The most I've seen is reinvention of Uno. They've tried to reinvent Uno, but certain things are just to what you said, just using the classics. Like, there's no reason why you can't go to a dollar store and pick up a deck of playing cards. You know what I mean? Like, that's right. It's so easy now, but it's just the art form. And the same thing, because even like people playing poker and stuff like that, once online poker became a thing, that was it. So you guys breathe life into the conventional card game, and on top of that, you did it in a way that still keeps things engaging, which is incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
can we use that?
Oh, you're welcome to do so. When I look at something like that, you it's not reinventing the wheel; it's just adding a little polish to the wheel. And I think that's what you guys did. And the best part of it is that you made it accessible to everybody. And even though the quote unquote humor is a little blue, so to speak, it's like, listen, 20 years ago, the most controversial thing was the guy from NYPD Blue showing his butt on TV,
Right.
Now forget it. Now You know, you could watch a TV show at 8:00 and someone will be called a bitch, and you'll be like, "Really? You guys got away with that at 8:00? Okay,
Yeah,
Right.
you know, it's such a seismic shift.
Ours is incredibly light blue.
Right.
I mean, you know, if you think that Oh Fruck is blue, I mean, you know, like,
Don't
you're
buy
never
it,
gonna
like
be
you
our
said.
customer. You know, there's 320 million people in the United States. Like, you know, you're not our customer.
Right.
And that's okay. You know, and that's, you know, that's part of product development, you know, and sales and marketing, and, you know, all if you try to appeal to everybody, you'll appeal to me.
100%.
You know, that's the number one rule for all this stuff, right? And, you know, I think that's like, for us that were around sort of in the old days, you know, so much of what was sold to us, again, was so lowest common denominator that, you know, it wasn't interesting. It wasn't good.
Half
you
of the
know,
stuff we had growing up should have killed us. Think about that. Like, half of the toys and stuff we played with. Think about it. All that stuff should have killed us.
yeah.
Like we were talking about. If you guys remember the Bionic 6, the cartoon, and the toys
Sure.
were all die-cast metal. You know, like that stuff should have killed us.
No, I know. I mean,
Right.
all the lead and everything. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, I'm surprised I didn't die. And what, you know what? Don't play with the plastic
Right.
from the dry cleaner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, don't get suffocated.
Oh, we
you know,
had
but-
we had a couple of those, like, I forget the names of them, but like Monster Maker kits.
Yep. I
where
remember
you're, like,
those. You pour the
mixing
gel in.
different, like, yeah, and then you're heating it up.
Yep.
You know, you could totally burn yourself, and it's all toxic. Or, you know, the lawn darts.
Yep.
Yeah. Shoot, there was something I wanted to say going back just 30 seconds there. And what were we talking about? Oh, yeah. So sometimes I teach elementary school art at a local public school.
Oh,
and
that's cool.
I was nervous about coming out with my card game. And, you know, but the funny thing is like a bunch of those parents like backed us on Kickstarter. And, you know, a lot of my old Leapfrog colleagues backed us on Kickstarter. And
That's awesome.
and thought it was hilarious. Yeah. And, you know, I'll be in like a second grade class teaching them, you know, like how to mix black and white to get gray and do value, or, you know, something. And some kid will be like, you know, hey, Mr. Tom, like I played your card game last night. Like, you know, I love it.
That's cool.
And
That's
everyone's
so
like,
awesome.
oh, what's his card game? Oh, it's called Oh Fruck. And I'm like, oh boy.
Oh no. You're like, uh-oh.
But yeah, you know, it's cool. It's great. Like, you know,
Well,
we have
it's-
some super fans that, you know.
Well, and you know, look, for the people who like it, it gives them joy. And so it's like, you know, on my end of the side of the business, you know, from where I'm coming from, you know, so much about advertising and marketing is trying to get people to buy stuff before they decide they don't want it. You know what I mean?
course.
Like before they figure out they didn't need it, you know,
Yep.
like you gotta get them to buy
Strike
it.
while the iron is hot.
Exactly. You know, don't hang up the phone, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know. And, you know, this really is, you know, this is just a totally different thing. You know, it's really a passion project for Tom and I. It's just part of, you know, kind of what we're about. And if you like it, you like it. Hopefully it gives you joy. And you know what? There's no lead in it. No one's going to get cancer, you know, like hopefully, unlike some games, there's not going to be any fighting, you know,
It's lighthearted
there's not going to
fun.
be any hard feelings, you know. The one thing about this game, I guess, you know, that does maybe alienate some people is, you know, which is a lot of the crux of the game is the physicality of it, and you've got to do sort of physical things, and there's you know a performance element to the game,
Of course.
and it is a raucous game. You know, you've got to get up and you got to do this, you got to do that. You know, we have another game coming out, another card-based game that we hope will be as hopefully as fun and funny as this game. That won't have quite that element to it. You know, I know that is probably, you know, it's a point of differentiation, but you know, but it is what it is. But you know, it's not Roundup. No one's going to get, you know, there's not going to be a class action suit about Oh Fruck anytime soon. And that makes me feel good. So,
I wanted to ask, Phil, did you write the copy for the site?
Well, Tom and I wrote the copy together. Yeah, I mean,
I wanted to actually bring that up only because I like that the fact that you made it a point to tell people like this is who we're catering it to, and this is who it's not for. And I think that leading with that is such a great thing to do, because again, you don't want gotcha. You don't want to get a letter from somebody, oh, my kids were playing this game. Like, I respect the fact that you guys were upfront with exactly who this was catered to, who you wanted to be your customer base, and more importantly, what was being leveraged in the value of the game, which is, hey, we're using a traditional deck of playing cards. We want a game, we want to reach people in this demographic. The humor's a little blue. If you don't like this, then this might not be for you. I respect that, because what happens is what you said before. If you do something for everybody, you're not going to get anybody.
Well, and I would say this, and this is probably jumping to a little bit about, is there anything I learned in 20 years or 30 years of selling, and in being in that side of the business, and it's counterintuitive. And I try to tell this, when I'm talking to people, or now that I'm talking to my kids about stuff and they're doing different things. If you have something to say it.
Yep.
And what a lot of people don't know about sales and marketing and advertising is the long copy sells. And, that's something that I always worked on with clients. People, a lot of people will say like, oh, keep it super simple. It's just keep, clean branding, just make it super simple. That usually doesn't sell. And I would, if I could,
like everyone else.
I had any word of advice to anybody selling almost anything, the fact of the matter is, statistically, people want to, it's like I always tell people, and now I'm dating myself, but everybody remembers from magazines, whether it's Reader's Digest or Time Magazine, there's always those guys running those ads in the back where it's like Dr. Fred says, and there's 1,000 words of copy there about how great his product is.
Yep, 100%.
That works. You know what? If you've got testimonials and you've got stuff that sell, like I would say that to anybody, who's listening to this, it's like, hey, how should I sell my toy or product? You know what? Sell it. Tell people that it's good. Tell them why you think it's good. And there's nothing wrong with telling people, excluding people, because then you create exclusivity.
Right.
Because when I read something that says like, oh, hey, don't look at this. Well, of course, the first thing you do is look at it.
Exactly.
It's all those things that you think are cliches. Well, they work. They work. Hey, don't look behind, don't look behind the curtain. Well, and I gotta look behind the curtain now. And, hey, I'm not a square. You know what I mean? Hey, this thing says if you're a square, don't buy it. Well, hey, I'm not a square, so I definitely want to check this thing out. So, I think, some of the tried and true stuff, it works. It still works. I mean, funny still works.
100%.
Charming still works, and and be honest about your product, because you don't want to get returns. That's what I'd say, with the game business and anything where you're producing something and sending it to them. You don't want people to buy your product with a misunderstanding.
No,
I don't want grandma to buy this game and give it to a 7-year-old and feel like, oh my God, this isn't, I didn't understand what kind of game this was going to be.
Well,
you don't want, you don't want to, because then you just get returns and then you get complaints. And that person, there's plenty of customers that your game will appeal to. You don't need those customers.
Well, I want to talk about the build portion of the game. When you guys did all, and obviously it's safe to assume you guys did all the artwork for it.
We have a third person. Tom, you want to jump in about? Jump in?
Yeah. So I did all the graphic design and all the the back of the decks and the rule sheet and all that stuff. But an old friend of ours, Mike Fisher, he's an illustrator.
A great illustrator.
He's great. Yeah. He's on Facebook, Maximum Fluoride Killustration. And he's rad. He's really funny to follow on Facebook too. But he did all of the character designs, like Maurice P. Moritz and the Fructopus and all those illustrations for us. But otherwise, yeah, it was, so between the three of us, between me and Mike, we did it all. Phil led with a firm hand.
No, we had we went through the thing and we had a concept, and we ultimately kind of had an aesthetic that we wanted for the game as we played through it, and we created, mock decks and printed mock decks and all that stuff. And then once we kind of had that whole character part of it established and the rules and all of that stuff, then that was when we brought in Mike, because he was the right exact person to bring in, just to bring those two. We sketched him out, but he's the one that had to bring them. We just knew he'd be the one to be able to bring them to life in a certain way that we wanted.
Nice. Now with that, how was your testing phase in order to figure out how you were tweaking the game? What was your market for that? Were you testing it with your kids? Were you giving decks to your friends? How was that process?
All of the above.
Okay,
Tom.
So we would play with. We hosted a bunch of games where we would play at Phil's house. His high school son is like president of the Dungeons and Dragons Club.
Oh man!
So he took it to school, and they started like a nonstop game where they were playing around the clock for like a couple weeks, I think. And
wow!
And we got a lot of great feedback from them. And then I was having my kids who were in 6th grade at the time, so they were playing with a bunch of their friends, and we were giving out decks to their friends and getting feedback. And then we had a network of friends and colleagues. It's one of those things where when you're in your 20s and you're starting out, you're like, wow, how would I ever talk?
You got to get a little closer.
Get to that mic. Get to that mic, Tom.
Gosh, I'm right here.
There you go.
But then, you blink and it's 30 years later and you're like, oh, yeah, I'll send this to my friend Craig at University Games. I'll send this to Sandy. She's over at Enki Labs. I'll send this to Bruce. I'll send it to Bill. He's over at Mattel. And so we sent it to a lot of people who had experience in the game industry. And it was usually, and it was nice because we got two kinds of feedback from them. Like they would play it with their families and give us feedback, but then they would also kind of do a critique, like as a peer,
right?
As a fellow professional, almost like we were all in the same company. And you're like, okay,
that's phenomenal.
Here's round 1 for review, and then we'd get all these comments back and be like, oh, great, okay, thanks, So yeah, so it worked out well. I think I play tested it so much with my kids that ironically, the whole point of the game was to have something we could play together. And then I'm like, let's play Oh Fruck. And they're like, oh, really? But all their friends want to play.
Right.
Their friends come over and they're like, let's play Oh Fruck. And they're like, okay,
Well, one of the things I did early on is tell my kids, oh, I'm helping, I would tell my son, hey, don't tell him your dad is involved in, tell him it's his friend's game, because I don't want to get their feedback. I don't want to get their feedback because, you
don't want bias.
That's a big part of, feedback, because people will never want to tell anybody bad news. So it was like, hey, tell them that, your dad is helping out his friend Tom with this game, so, let me know what they think about it, and I'll let Tom know, that's kind of how we got started on some of that. Cause, I wanted to get some legitimate feedback, but, at the end of the day, you just got to watch the people play. I mean, I kind of have a good setup here where my son and kind of just the way our neighborhood is, all of his friends pour in here on a regular basis to play Dungeons and Dragons and do all their stuff, watch Netflix and do their whole, he's got that whole Dungeons and Dragons group. And then I have a younger daughter who, she's got her kind of pack of girls. So I just kind of would get it worked out where they would come and play. And I could just kind of, peek in and kind of see what was actually happening without really playing, so it became kind of an informal focus group that I could watch,
That's pretty
without them really even realizing it was. And and back to kind of tricks of the trade that we learned, again, like because it's 2019, not 1989, we would just order as we realized, hey, we kind of need to make a change to the card, or we need to do this, or like we should kind of do the action card in a different way. We would just order, you can, $20, and 2 days later, you can order digital decks, like guys in China will do digital decks.
Oh, wow.
and they'll FedEx them back to you. So, they're not playing on, on an index card. We would, even with scratch art, we would print them on, on cards that felt like cards. So it felt like a real thing pretty quickly, even though like some of the cards might have just had some hand art that got transposed onto the card. They were actually like linen, like the nice cards that are in the game now. They felt good,
Oh, wow.
and so people feel they're playing something real. And I think that's a big part of the testing, that, it's a game, it's tactile. So people want to feel it's real, and it can't be too precious. It needs to feel a little bit man-made. It can't feel like a hand-drawn thing.
Nope.
So it was totally worth it to do that. Like that is a, for people who, wanting to do their own games, like it's really not a big deal, to upload, and 3-4 days later you get a couple of decks of cards and you can play, and it's a real thing.
Has this experience made your children want to get involved in designing their own games?
My son is designing 2 games with me.
That's
we have
awesome.
well, with Tom as well, but we've got a couple of ideas around sort of a little bit more heavy on the strategy side.
Right.
Board games that I think, I don't want to, like I never want to say too much.
No, of course. I respect that.
But he's a gamer. I mean, my son is a gamer. I think, in terms of the testing, my daughter's probably more like me. She's more impatient. She's more of a casual gamer.
Right.
She likes Oh Fruck, exploding kittens kind of stuff. Her friends come over, so they're always kind of, and they love Oh Fruck, and they're in the videos and stuff that we, our promo stuff, and they play those kind of, around the campfire type stuff. That's their deal. Games that, 15-minute games. My son is in that world of, Dad, don't touch, like, can I leave this stuff on the table for another day, because we haven't finished this game.
Right.
So he's in that world, and, so he's kind of, interested in a couple of different, kind of strategy ideas. So, it's a good time no matter what. So we're kind of working on a couple of things. So there may be some Kickstarters next year based on kind of the things that we're testing now.
That's very cool. I like hearing stuff like that, because it's always a better experience when you can involve your family in a passion project that can eventually become, a revenue generator, because it helps them be a part of something bigger.
Oh, absolutely. And what I told him, like I said, bro, you got to do this, because like they're kind of some good ideas, and it's like, then you can get a check at college that doesn't come from me.
That's right.
Right.
There you go. That's a hell of a way to put it.
Yeah.
Well,
The
that's
thing
the other
too.
thing. When you make money, I was going to say, it's like I like try to tell my kids, when you make money at something, it makes it way more interesting.
Absolutely.
But go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, his son is smarter than us.
Exactly.
So, like, he can actually be like, hey, you guys should do, like, kind of like strategy, warlord, this, that, the, building hands, with these kind of variables, and, and he can build like a computer simulation to like balance the mechanics. Wow. And and I'm just like, okay, ship it.
Yeah, I know. We're art school. He's the real deal. He's part of a whole crowd. I mean, kids are so much smart. I mean, whatever. That's a different podcast.
No,
my kids, my daughter is not. She's not interested in designing games, but she she is constantly introducing me to new card games with
Nice.
that you play with the regular. Like when You Got Crabs came out, I was like, oh, that's good. That's Gumsh. Because she would go to summer camp and they would just sit in a circle and play all these different games like James Bond and all these games I'd never heard of, and they're all kind of fun and they're all kind of have goofy rules and whatever, and so she's great just to kind of pick her brain a little bit.
Right.
My son, yeah, he designed a game last year that was pretty awesome.
Nice.
I don't think I ever showed it to you, Phil. It's like a Western themed game. He got a shoebox and turned it on side, made it the saloon, and then he got this like big piece of poster board, and you have these different cowboy characters, like one is the town drunk, and one is the marshal, and one is the female sharpshooter, and you're all like trying to get to the hotel without getting shot.
Was your son watching Deadwood on HBO?
Terrible. Like it wasn't fun to play, but it was hilarious. And
right.
So, and I can just steal some ideas from stuff.
There you go. Now I noticed that you guys embraced Shopify as your back end to run your site, and I wanted to address that because a lot of people, when they're trying to get their projects off the ground, they don't know where to start. Did you consciously do that because you said, we want the easiest solution possible just because this is a passion project, or did you gravitate towards that for other reasons?
I'll jump in. I've used Shopify in the past for other much more boring businesses.
Right.
So I had a lot of experience with Shopify
Gotcha.
actually from early on and using Stripe and all that stuff. So it was to some extent, and from the technical side of that side of the business, it was really a plug and play situation. It's $29 a month. It was plug and play in terms of being able to get the site set up and just get rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of my world of, and folks that like I can lean on of like, hey, this template's not working correctly. Yeah, can you throw me a bone and get in there? Hey, do this for, can you just fix this template for me, or can you do that? I have a circle, and I had experience in Shopify, and look, I'll tell you this, for the purposes of if in terms of people who are thinking about doing this and are looking for advice, Shopify is plenty good, and it's generally pretty much plug and play. And the fact of the matter is, everyone's buying the games on Amazon, for better or for worse. Everyone's buying the games on Amazon. Pretty much. It's not like, at least for the time being for us, and for the folks that we talk to in the space, and I wouldn't at all claim to be an expert in the space in terms of knowing hundreds of people with hundreds of websites in the gaming business, and that I have some giant statistical sample of what's going on out there. But in general, the general public statistics, much of the game business is now happening on Amazon because people want to use Amazon Prime, and they just are already, it's a plug and play solution for them. We can see by all the people who buy it on Amazon, it's you can get a sense of what's going on there. And it's, I don't think it's any different than my house or Tom's house. I don't know about your house, but my kids, everybody logs on as their mom. Everybody's logged on to Amazon, and when they want something, that's generally where that kind of product is purchased now, either there or Target. I don't, it's so that's kind of the, I guess, maybe long-winded answer to it. I don't know unless we were at a totally different type of level, that we would ever need anything beyond a Shopify type platform currently.
Gotcha. Now, I did want to ask before we move into the next part. I did want to ask with regards to that. Obviously, the changing of just game purchasing at the retail level. I applaud the fact that you guys acknowledge, like, hey, Amazon's the new player, and then you got Target, Walmart, etc. Because the Toys R Us days, the specialty store days are over, and now a lot of stores are just becoming jack of all trades. Like Target went from selling the occasional action figures or toys and now they have a little bit of everything. Cards Against Humanity, all that other stuff is there now, and they're embracing kind of like that niche pop culture phenomenon that's going on, especially when it comes to games, both card game and otherwise. Do you guys feel that change, that retail change, was a big driving force in the success of this game, or do you feel, playing devil's advocate, if you would have been able to get this game in Toys R Us, you would have done just as well?
Oh, I think it's the former. Getting the thing into physical retail in terms of a launch strategy,
right,
just means a lot more financial risk to the producer, right? Like I gotta have physical product that I gotta deliver to them. I don't know if they'll sell it or not, and they have to have physical product in stores, in enough stores to have a statistical sample, right? Of like, right, is this something people want or they don't want? And, with Amazon, you ship them the games and you're everywhere overnight.
Right.
And, there's just no other, there's nothing to compare to that. And, of course, people can go to Target online and people can go to Walmart online, et cetera, et cetera. But, this isn't a political, this is just, they dominate the space.
Right.
It is what it is. I look at my kids, they just buy everything on Amazon. They basically hardly buy anything in a physical store. It's just, and if it's available on Amazon versus buying it off of someone's website, they'll just buy it on Amazon because the account is already there.
Right.
And they know that they know generally that they're going to get it pretty quickly. And if there's a problem, there's already, there's returns and everything that's already, baked into the cake. So I would say, on the downside, and this is, I'm not saying anything everybody isn't talking about in multiple categories, on the downside, you've got all your eggs in one basket.
True.
That's the real downside. The upside is you got all your eggs in one basket because, hey, you ship to Amazon fulfillment, they send it to all these sub warehouses, they take the customer returns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, the downside is, all your eggs are in the basket with Amazon. So, that's the nature of the business right now. I think it will shake out over time. I don't know that other players and, stuff changes so fast now.
Yep.
That, who knows what the nature of the online sales channel will be in 10 years. But I know that it won't be what it is today because it's totally different than it was 10 years ago.
Well,
it's just who knows, but it will be different. I just don't know what that will be, and we'll just adapt.
Amazon is trying to open physical stores, so you already see that it's changing in a unique way, because here you have this digital retailer and they're like, yeah, we're going to open some physical stores to get foot traffic, and it's like, what?
Well, yeah. I think, and they've had some difficulty with that.
Yep.
And I don't know all the details behind that, and I'm not an expert I'm not qualified to give a business analysis other than to say there still is a need to have sort of a showroom around products.
Absolutely.
And, I still think, like we were at Toy Fest and then we went over to Meepleville, and we've got Tim who runs Meeple, great guy. And, there's, he's got, a fantastic game store in Las Vegas. And there's still a need, that niche is still going to hang around. People still want to be able to see stuff in person.
Absolutely.
It's just how do you have a business where some large set of people are going to go, you look at something in person and then buy it online later, and then you don't capture any of the sale. That's the challenge that a lot of these retailers, that's a different discussion. But you know, there's still going to be a need for that.
One thing we've seen is, you know, with Meepleville in Las Vegas, and then, you know, my local specialty game store in LA, and then Geeky Teas and Games out in Burbank, is you almost get the sense, I don't know if it's true, but you almost get the sense that they're making more money hosting games every night. You know, you can go and you can just go and you pay a fee and you can play all the board games in their libraries.
Yep,
or, you know, they'll have a night for Magic the Gathering, or a night for D&D, or a night for Pandemic or something.
Yep, and comic book stores do that with tabletop night and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah, and which I love, because it's, you know, it's the whole social thing, which you lose. You know, you lose with Amazon.
100%. I think this will be a great way to segue into the hot seat. We're just gonna fire off some rapid fire questions. I'll alternate between the two of you, different ones, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
All right.
Ask me the easy ones, please.
So obviously both of you gentlemen, you know, are pretty plugged into your business. So I'm assuming the bulk of your work is done via mobile and laptop, correct?
Yes.
All right. So what is your current mobile device? I'll start with you, Phil.
I'm on an Android. I'm all Android. I don't do any Apple products.
Wow. Really? So
no Apple.
What phone are you using then?
Oh, I am on what am I on? I'm on a Motorola with a very cracked screen, and I will be shortly purchasing a Pixel. I think that's going to be my next. I think it's going to be my next device. My daughter, God bless her, saved up and got herself a Pixel, and I got to say, it's pretty rad, and the photos are fantastic.
Yeah, the photos are beautiful on that phone. So definitely, if you're a big picture taker, that's a nice device. Tom, what about you?
I'm all Android.
You too, huh? Nice. Yeah. What are you using?
My phone is it's a Galaxy Note 5. It's a couple years old, but
love the Note phones. Love them.
I've gone through like 3 of them. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's you know, I mean, it's my fault. You know, I get it wet or I drop it. I always just want to get the same phone because I love it. You know, the stylus is awesome.
Oh, the stylus was such a. I was a hardcore Note user up until the whole exploding Note fiasco with the 7, and then they gave me one of the phones. I think it was the S8 at the time or the S7. And I was just like, nope, not the same. So I ended up just jumping back into the Apple ecosystem, and then I just didn't look back because everything just works so seamlessly. But yeah, man, the Note phones, nobody can replicate that until Apple decides to put a stylus inside like an iPhone Max or something. It's just not happening. Like Samsung definitely knocked it out of the park. I can agree with that.
Absolutely.
So with that said, when I'll go back to Tom for this, when you wake up and you unlock your phone in the morning, what's the first app you go to?
Oh, I don't want to admit I check Facebook.
All right, look at that.
I see, you know, I've uninstalled it a couple times, but then I just end up going through the browser interface.
Oh man, you get sucked back in.
Yeah, so you know, it's either that or honestly, I hop on the browser and I go to a site called Arts and Letters Daily, where it's a blog. Yeah, they post 3, like an essay and a book review, essay, opinion, and book review every day.
Oh, that's
it's
awesome.
Like a culture, and it's not and cool tools I check out too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, don't get all deep on us, Tom.
No.
What
about you, Phil? Where do you go first?
I honestly, the first thing I do is I open up my Amazon app, you know, because I can there's an app dashboard, so I can see what's happening on Amazon. Nice. Honestly, that's the first thing I do every morning is I get on Amazon and I see how many did I sell, you know, what was my final count of units sold yesterday, what's happening today, is there any messages, what's going on, and then I go to Instagram. I'm not big on Facebook, but I would say I jump into Amazon and then I jump into Instagram.
Very cool. What's your I'll go back to you, Phil. What's your favorite piece of tech besides your phone or your computer?
My favorite piece of tech, God. I don't know what my favorite piece. God, I don't really think. Everything is so like part of your life.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what my favorite piece. You know what? Probably my barbecue meat thermometer is my favorite piece of tech.
Hey, that works.
So
that works.
That'll tell you where my priorities are. But I swear to God, it's a lifesaver. Because I'm going to be using it later tonight. Like
I use one. I'm with you. What about you, Tom?
My Sonos wireless speaker. I got a few years ago, set it, and it was one of those things where you just out of the box, you set it up, you connect it to your Wi-Fi, you download the controller. I've got my Amazon Music, my Google Play account, my Spotify account, my Bandcamp, my Pandora, music from my own band that I have on my phone, and it's awesome. It just always works. Sounds awesome.
What's the name of your band, Tom?
Legion of Rock Stars. Yeah, we've been playing for about 20 years. We listen to classic songs on headphones with the volume turned up as loud as possible, so we can't hear ourselves, and then we try and play along. So
nice,
in sync but out of tune.
Hey,
it's an event. It's an event.
That's awesome. Now, people always have a blast with this. What's something you've purchased, and I'll go with Phil first. What's an item you've purchased recently that's less than $100 that's made your life either easier or just more enjoyable?
Oh God. And I already answered meat thermometer.
Does a bottle of gin count?
Yeah, exactly.
It could be anything. I mean, everybody. I always tell people the definition of toys here is pretty universal because it's not just relegated to action figures. People collect a bunch of different stuff and are into different things. But yeah,
I don't know what the answer to that is. God, I'm making myself seem like I don't know. I'm gonna pass. Tom, you answer first.
Go ahead, Tom.
I bought a wallet. I read about it. It's funny because I read about it on Cool Tools and then bought it and then met a buddy for breakfast and he pulled the exact same wallet out of his pocket because he'd read it on Cool Tools too.
Was it the Ridge wallet?
It's called the Slim Fold.
Oh, okay.
And it's an ultra slim wallet and it's hard to explain. It's when you open it up, your various cards are like 4 across.
Oh wow!
So instead of having your driver's license like horizontal,
right?
And having things horizontal, it does them vertical. So there's 2 pockets for cards, and then the fold, and then 2 more pockets for cards. So you can have your insurance card, your AAA, and then 5 credit cards and business cards, and it's still like a super slim wallet.
Nice. All right.
And it's I love it.
Very, very cool. I'll go with Phil for this one. You guys were talking about cigars earlier. What's your favorite cigar?
Well, I guess the favorite cigar is the Cohiba, but the problem is now you know what? I used to smoke cigars all the time and think I was cool, and now it's not it's not cool to smoke cigars at all. And then if you stop smoking cigars, then you can't smoke them because you lose your tolerance.
Right.
So it's been a while since I've been smoking cigars. You know what? I would say my better half decided about 10 or 15 years ago the joke was over and no more cigars.
Wow.
So that's kind of how it went with cigars.
Oh wow.
So,
okay. but still the Cohiba was it for you, huh?
Well, if you could get a real Cuban Cohiba, if somebody could slip you one, that was always there's branding for you.
There you go. Absolutely. Tom, here's one maybe you'll have fun with this. Favorite medium for art: pen, pencil, or digital?
Oh, well, oh man. Well, I can never just have a simple answer. When I'm working with elementary school kids,
okay,
paint, because I like to get them sloppy with the paint. Put it on thick, fill the page, work big, use your whole arm, get them loose,
nice.
Get them not afraid to drip, make mistakes. So I love painting with kids. Myself, I like to. I love sketching with pencils, and if I'm trying to come up with ideas, what are those? Is it Tombow pens? Tombow markers? Is that what they're called? Oh boy, they're lovely. They're like brush markers.
Oh
They're
wow,
wonderful.
Sounds pretty
But
dope.
like Oh Fruck, we couldn't have done it without photoshopping it. So at a certain point, you kind of have to admit,
Right.
it's like, oh, I love nature. I'm going to take a picture and post it to the internet, show you how much I love nature.
That's a hell of a way to put it.
Yeah.
All right. Phil, this is people always have fun with this. If you could have dinner with someone dead or alive, who would it be? What would you talk about, and what would you eat?
Oh my God.
Oh, I'm killing you guys.
I'll tell you exactly the dinner that I would like to have.
Shoot.
Because Alfred Hitchcock supposedly ate at Chasen's restaurant, which is no longer there in Beverly Hills. And my understanding is that he would regularly eat there, and he would have a martini. He would have the shrimp cocktail. He would have a steak dinner, dessert, and then he would do it all over again. And you know what? I'll do it. I'll do that. You know what? I'm up for the challenge. I'll do the old school dinner at Chasen's with Alfred Hitchcock twice.
Nice.
I'm ready.
Very cool. What about you, Tom?
Wow. Now I want to change my answer and make it a party of three. I was listening to a podcast recently with the drummer of the Meat Puppets.
Okay.
And I was listening to him talk, Derek Bostrom, and I was just like, yeah, I totally get this guy. Like, I followed that band since the mid 80s. Like, I would love to have dinner with them. I don't know if they'd love to have dinner with me, but I don't know. Otherwise, I've always been a huge Abraham Lincoln buff. So I'd love to have dinner with Abraham Lincoln. The problem is I think he suffered like chronic constipation his whole life and had a super limited diet. Like he only ate potatoes and stuff. So
that's crazy. Learn something new.
I don't know. I'd go for the steak and fries with him, but I don't know if he would partake.
Very cool. All right. Last question. Where do you guys want to see the Fruckus Company a year from now? And we could start, whoever wants to go first.
Tommy, I'll jump in. We've got two things that are pretty far along in the hopper. We took a run at what we think is a great shedding game. We have a trick taking game that we're going to launch on Kickstarter this summer, which we are super excited about, and we have an additional partner, Gina Kelly, a friend of ours, who was kind of a semi-pro card player, and she's super cool, and she's been working on this game with us, so we're pretty passionate about it. So we have a card game coming out in the summertime, and then we have our first board game that we're going to try to launch towards the end of the year, kind of a mind control thing. So I guess I would say, where we want to be next year is we want to have these 3 games out. We want them to be, we want people to like them, and we like them. And I think if this time next year, if we've got these 3 games out there, we're going to be pretty happy.
Nice.
And I want to be, if I'm allowed to answer too,
go ahead,
a year from now, I want to have a booth at Comic-Con.
Nice.
Phil we'll get off the phone and he'll say, dude, it doesn't make financial sense.
Well played.
But, it's like, yeah, I want to have my booth at Comic-Con and be hanging out and talking to people,
Well, would you want to do San Diego or New York?
San Diego.
That's the place to be, I hear.
Yeah.
So
what's funny, it's barely a comic book convention anymore.
Nope.
It's a pop culture convention.
You are 100% spot on.
Yeah. And it's not a game convention. It's not really a gaming convention at all. But there is one kind of small half aisle or maybe a couple pockets there where you always see really, really cool stuff. And then it's always the nicest people. and I'd love to just set up and hang out and be
Well,
the next guy,
well,
one
if you
booth
guys ever
over.
decide to do New York Toy Fair, we cover that. So
Yeah, we'll be there at some point. We'll see. Hopefully,
nice.
hopefully.
We talked about going this year, but we talked to a lot of people, and they were like, for where you guys are at with your game and selling through Amazon, you don't really need to be at
Right.
Toy Fair
Yep.
right now, and I was kind of like, but I want to go to New York and have a steak dinner and go to Toy Fair,
There you go.
and the business half was like, dude, like, knock it off.
There you go. Now, obviously, the title of our show is Toys and Tech of the Trade, so we got to get some toys in there. What were and I'll start with you, Tom. What was one of your favorite toys growing up?
One of my favorite toys growing up, well, Lego sets.
Okay.
Growing up, that was big, and my electric train set.
Nice. Were you a collector, or did you just like to play with them?
I just like to play with them. I'm a child of the '70s, so with a Lego, they had a Lego City and they had like some space stuff. It wasn't like it is now.
Oh yeah.
With all the different things where you can collect and the model trains. I wanted to be a collector, but it. I would look at the magazines. I had dreams, but I never actually like built set. But I had my little thing running around.
There you go. Phil, what about you?
G.I. Joe.
Nice.
I don't know if that, but I gotta say, and I had this bitchin' G.I. Joe Jeep that I had saved, and it was in perfect condition, and I was an idiot, and I gave it to my son when he was too young, and he just friggin' destroyed it. It was probably worth some good,
Oh man!
Like I should have just kept it. Like you know what? It was like the super old school when G.I. Joe was like the big size G.I. Joe, and it was a really big bitchin' old school, like World War II style, Jeep. And it was like in perfect condition. I don't know why my mother had it, and it was, at her house. And I think I got it when they moved, and I gave it to my son, and, he was too young for it, and he had a great time with it. And, just
that was the end of that.
That was the end of that. And I was like, you know what? Damn, I should have kept it. It was, it was cool. I mean, it was super cool. I mean, it wasn't in the box or anything like that, but it was in really nice condition. But I was I had all that. I mean, I wish I still had all that stuff, obviously, in terms of the collectability of it. But I had all that G.I. Joe stuff. I mean, I had all the G.I. Joes, all the outfits, all the jumpsuits and machine guns and and belts. And I had all, he had every outfit for every occasion. My G.I. Joe had he was well dressed for every occasion. So there you go.
Tom, you had talked about comic books earlier. Are you reading any currently?
Am I reading any currently? No, I'm not. I will admit that I'm not. My son is reading Hip Hop Family Tree.
Okay.
Which Ed Piskor put out, it's the history of hip hop and rap music done, there's many volumes of it, and it's awesome. I was a big fan of the All-Star Superman, but that's probably like 10 years old at this point.
I loved All-Star Superman. That was a great run.
It's like the best thing. I get like warm fuzzies when I talk to people. And
great book.
Darwin Cook's New Frontier. I was following the Captain America, for a few years, before the movies came out. But then, but what they always do is you'll be following a comic and it'll be great and you'll love it and you'll love the storyline. So naturally, they're like, we got a hot property here. Let's split it into two titles.
Yep, 100%.
And then let's do a crossover.
Yep.
And then let's do, a crisis. And then we're going to do a reboot. And then all of a sudden, you're like, well, what the heck? Like, I was reading that one story a month, and now I'm getting like a month.
Oh, you got to get back.
We lost you.
I'm right here.
There you go.
Yeah. So, so nothing at the moment. Usually when I go to Comic-Con each year, I pick up a couple, Fantagraphics books or drawn in quarterly books, so the Wally Wood Jack Kirby space thing, and I can't remember. Oh, Sky Masters, the space. It was a comic strip that they did in like the late 50s, early 60s. It's beautiful, and so that I pick that up once in a while. That's fine. I'll pick that up and kind of ease my way.
Nice. All right.
What about you? Are you reading anything right now?
I am. I actually finished reading a bunch of the book Invincible. Everybody kept talking about it, and I was doing a comic podcast with a colleague of mine for a while, and everybody was like, "Oh, Invincible." And I was like, "All right, let me see what the big deal is." So I used. I'm reading a lot of books digitally now. I'm actually downsizing my collection because I just don't read them. So it's like somebody else could enjoy them more. So I ended up getting a Comixology Unlimited membership and downloading Invincible, read the whole thing. Initially, I wasn't into the art style, but then as the story progressed, the art style just got better, and I was like, wow, this would make for a great movie if they did it right.
Yeah. Or a great series.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my son loves that.
Yeah, so
I got him hooked on it, and then I kind of tailed off, and he just kept going with it.
Yeah, so I've been reading that, and I just I read Jason Aaron and the Thor, the God Killer, which is actually which was a phenomenal story because it kind of ties now into Venom, which is crazy because obviously they want to make Venom a part of everything, just like Wolverine. So there's a whole bunch of that, but that was phenomenal. I think if they ever wanted to do that, especially if they can score that Spider-Man license, that would be a hell of a good Thor movie to do.
I'll check that out. I haven't read that.
Yeah, it's an amazing read, and the story, it's good because it's been going on. It ties into so many other things. So now they have, like you were saying, there's a big arc now, which is War of the Realms, which basically kind of started way back when, and basically all the villains from all the different realms that Asgard deals with are now coming into our realm. So like,
nice.
Like the Punisher is like fighting dark elves in Midtown, and he's like shooting them with like a special gun from Asgard. It's crazy.
Right.
So, very, very big, crazy stuff, fun stuff. All right. So last part, of course, is our reach one, teach one, give our listeners some value. So, I'll put it to Phil first. If if someone wakes up and decides, hey, I want to get into advertising in this day and age, especially if it's a younger person, what piece of advice would you give them?
What piece of advice would I get? To be in the advertising business?
Yep.
I guess, the name of the game is data, and I do have an older kid, and she's been big into it, and she's thinking she's going to get into advertising, and she's had some internships, and she's got a job coming down the road, and it's all about data now. I talked about selling, and all of those old school things. I guess I would give two words of advice.
Shoot.
Learn, sales is sales, funny is funny. And all that's like the old school stuff still work. Like the human animal hasn't changed. Technology hasn't really changed people. People still respond to the same stuff. The advertising business today is all about data, but as much as as important as the data is, you still have to sell people. And when you sell people, those classic techniques, you asked me about, hey, why did you do certain things on the website, and why did you write things in a certain way? Or, I could talk about the package all day long. At the end of the day, a lot of that is just based on, best practices that worked 100 years ago, and they still work today. And I would tell people, like, as much as you've got to learn, all the new stuff, and you've got to learn technology, and you've got to whether or not, you got to know SQL, and you got to know this, and you got to know that, you still need to understand the basics of what makes people respond. What is a great ad? And, so that would be my advice to people.
Nice. For you, Tom, I'm going to go more so in the space with games and getting into the gaming industry. What piece of advice do you have for someone looking to get a fellow creative, much like yourself, a young artist or someone that wants to get into the gaming industry, whether it be tabletop, conventional, or even just video game, what's a piece of advice you could send their way?
Well, it's funny. It's show up. Just show up. So much. So this is the basic advice, and then I'll give some real advice too. But if you kind of look at like, okay, there's people who are incompetent, there's people who are competent, and then there's people who are excellent. And so, if you finally get that job at Mattel that you were hoping for, and they hired you to be the receptionist, let's say, be an awesome receptionist, show up, man the phones, like do what's required, like talk to people, find a mentor, find someone who will give you a leg up and give you opportunities. But you gotta do your job and do it well. Now, I came up in a very different era than now. So, I don't know if I have the best advice because I got out of college and what I got into is I got into video game testing, and it was an entry level position, but it allowed me to test a lot of different types of video games and interact with a lot of different development teams and get a sense of what role I might want to grow into. Did I want to be a producer? Did I want to be a designer? Did I want to be a creative? Did I want to be more on the post-production end or be an animator? And so, starting out in QA is a great way to go. If you want to make a board game or something like that, I would almost say with Kickstarter and things like that, go for it. Find a local specialty store, find your peeps, your people, your community, people who will play test it, give you honest feedback, and make a list of everyone and oh, I've got a buddy who's a copy editor. Oh, I know someone who's a lawyer. Oh, I know someone whose cousin is in advertising. You just make that list of everyone and what they do, and you start to realize oh yeah, I could do this. I can pull it off. Yeah.
I think that's a hell of a way. I think that's a hell of a way to close things out, and I particularly like that you said it. Just show up, especially if you want to get your foot in the door and leverage that to take yourself to the next level and find a mentor is huge. It's definitely huge, actionable advice, and I truly appreciate you for sharing that.
Thanks.
All right, gentlemen, that's going to wrap things up. I really want to take the time to thank you both for sharing the toys and tech of your trade. Last but not least, where can people find you both and keep up with your work?
ohfruck.com.
There you go.
Just go to ohfruck.com. I'm sorry. Go to ohfruck.com and you can contact us there, and you can check out the game, and there you go.
All right.
And you can follow us on Facebook as well.
Yep.
Just search for Oh Fruck. We're not. I'll admit, we don't have the busiest stream. It's we're out there hustling our games more than we're posting. But if you want to reach us, you can contact us through that and on right away.
There you go. We'll make sure to link to all your social media accounts in the show notes for this episode, along with some of the stuff we discussed.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Gentlemen, once again, thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing the toys and tech of your trade.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that wraps up our interview with Phil DeRivo and Tom Mott. Links to the Fruckus Company as well as social media will be in the show notes for this episode. We'll also have links to all of the stuff that we talked about, which, full disclosure as always, may contain some affiliate links, which if you click, we receive a small commission, which goes towards making a bigger and better RageWorks for you, the listeners, viewers, or readers. Last but not least, if you enjoyed what we did, please take a moment and give us a rating on iTunes. We would really, really appreciate it. A quick reminder, the publishing schedule for Toys and Tech of the Trade will be changing from Tuesdays to Wednesdays, bi-weekly still, but just a day later. Last but not least, if you'd like to be a guest on a future episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade, you can email me podcast@rageworks.net, or fill out the contact form on the site. You can also find us on any of your favorite social media outlets of choice, but the best way to engage with us is on Instagram, Facebook, or via our Facebook group. We're usually monitoring that pretty consistently, whether it's myself or a member of the RageWorks team. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks for your attention. Peace.
Behind every company, there's a time-tested engine keeping it moving. After earning his master's in accounting degree online from Grand Canyon University, Isaac's helping drive his client's business forward by identifying efficiencies and building business models. He's become a core team member, keeping clients on budget and ensuring their success. What do you think accounting careers look like? GCU offers over 175 high-quality online programs like this one. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu.
Right now, switch your family to T-Mobile and get 4 lines for $25 a line with AutoPay and 5G access included on America's largest 5G network. So don't wait. Get unlimited and nationwide 5G access for the whole family for just $25 a line. Visit a T-Mobile store or T-Mobile.com today.
Plus taxes and fees. Customers may notice lower speeds and further reduction if using over 50 gigs a month due to data prioritization. Video at 480p. Unlimited while on our network. Qualifying credit and 4+ lines required. Capable device required for 5G. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain features. See T-Mobile.com.